Hi, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Willows Park Preserve programming coming to you from the studio for the first time this year. Our goal is to produce a monthly program to inform our audience about the Willows Park Preserve, a new nonprofit located in Villanova. My name is Will Nord and I'm going to be your host today for the program. The Willows Park Preserve is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that was founded in 2017 by a group of passionate Radnor residents who see revitalizing the Willows Mansion as an opportunity to create a public space for the people of the greater Philadelphia area while increasing community health and connection through expanded programming. In 2019, the Willows Park Preserve entered a 25-year lease with Radnor Township. Our organization's goal is to restore this beautiful home in order to give it back to the community for everyday use. There will be portions of the home that will be open every day from dawn to dusk. In addition to having access to the building, we will be providing a diverse offering of educational, health and wellness programs and events for all ages. Today, we're happy to welcome Tom McCarthy from Bartlett Tree Experts to the program. Welcome, Tom.
Welcome, thank you.
So Tom, let's go back to the beginning. Well, let's start with you introducing yourself. Tell us a little bit about Bartlett Tree Experts. What's your role there and how long have you been there?
So I'm an arborist with Bartlett Tree Experts. I've been there about 7 years. Bartlett's a large company, but it's a family-owned business. Robert Bartlett still runs it today. His grandfather started it over 100 years ago. We, as a company and all of the employees, pretty much have a similar mindset where we'll go out and we'd rather diagnose an issue, whether it's a disease or insect issue that's causing a tree to possibly decline, figure out what that cause is, fix it, and keep the tree, instead of just cutting it down and starting fresh or planting grass. But I've been there about 7 years.
Okay. And your title, your role?
Arborist representative. I manage our office in Bala-Kenwood.
Okay.
But my main position is an arborist with them.
So I just started the Willows Park Preserve this past December, so I was not around when Bartlett and the Willows Park Preserve, came into a partnership. So can you go back and let us know when that happened and how that partnership was formed?
Yeah, about 3 years ago. It started about 3 years ago. One of the people on the preserve, one of the original founders, Tish Long, I've known from before any of this at the Willows began. And just in a conversation about unrelated things, she mentioned the Willows, the plant, her idea, her vision for it, what they were trying to do, and some obstacles they were going to encounter on the way. So there was the obvious, what can you do to help? And the number one thing that comes to mind is money. But there's other obstacles that were going to be encountered as well. When she mentioned, ideally, the Willows could become an arboretum, that was kind of the light bulb. Well, I'm not an expert in helping organizations become classified as arboretums, but I do know that step one is a tree inventory. Any arboretum has to have an inventory. So we discussed it a little more. I thought about it. We have an inventory team at Bartlett, so I gave them a call, discussed the background of the Willows, what it was, what the goals were, and we ended up getting an inventory done about a year later.
Okay. So I guess adding on to that question, what's entailed? So what were the first steps that Bartlett, you all had to do in order to classify the Willows Park Preserve, the Willows Park as an arboretum? What you have to do first, what did you have to do in order to complete the identification, and how long? You said it took about a year.
A year from that initial
Okay.
conversation to when the
Finishing
inventory
it
was
up.
done. Yeah.
Okay.
We actually did the easy part, the inventory.
Okay.
There's a process to go through, and the preserve did that paperwork, did that process. But before even beginning that process, you have to have an inventory in place. So after I talked to our inventory team, they came out, we did a walkthrough to get a on-site feel for what we wanted to do. We decided the best place to concentrate, if you look at the Willows from above, there's the entry driveway and the exit driveway, then the mansion up at the top.
Yeah.
We thought it would be best to keep the inventory from those two driveways in and from the mansion down. So trees outside of those areas going into the woods did not get done,
Okay.
but we just concentrated on the inner portion where majority of people are going to spend their time.
Right. It's a 47.5 acre park,
Yeah,
so
it's large. Yeah.
a lot of trees in the
Yeah.
park.
Yeah.
So I guess let's back up a little bit in terms of what is an arboretum? How do you classify a property as an arboretum? And then I guess also, after you answer that, what are the benefits of an arboretum? What are the attractions of an arboretum?
So I guess the textbook answer, what is an arboretum? Basically an official, documented organization, collection of trees on one property.
Okay.
Most times it's a public type of property, colleges, cemeteries, parks. There's benefits for the arboretum itself, and then for the public, the visitors. And I guess from the visitor side, I think it would draw people, having an arboretum, the Willows Park and Arboretum is going to draw people to the Willows that it may not have if it was just the Willows Park. People that really like trees are going to search it out. People that may not be totally into trees may get there and think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit more about the identification process. So you're the tree experts. How does that go? How does that go about identifying a tree? And then what do you, throw in a couple questions at you at once, what do you do after that? After you identify those trees. So talk a little bit more about that process.
So about 90%, 80% of the inventory itself is done on site, walking around. So a few people go in. They were there for a few days, walking around they have a backpack with a GPS unit, a tablet, and go around to every tree. Stop at each tree, measure it, note the size, the species, the condition, any needs it may have, whether immediate needs or if it's hazardous or if it's in great condition. And everything gets entered into the tablet, gets uploaded into a program, and the end result is a nice online version of the inventory and also a print version that's kind of like a book you can flip through.
So that's the end product, essentially. And so we actually have that on our website that's provided, and there's a link, and it's many, many pages of a lot of information about our arboretum. Another kind of byproduct of the identification and part of the arboretum is if you walk around in the arboretum, or if you walk around the Willows Park Preserve, a lot of those trees have these black labels, black tags that are hanging on the trees that are fairly visible. Can you tell us about those tags?
Sure. Whenever an inventory is done, whether it's by Bartlett or by someone else, the tree gets tagged. Most times you'll see a lot of townships, say Lower Merion has their street trees. There's little metal tags with a number stamped in them. That's from the township tree inventory. Somewhere, someone can look that number up and has access to the system and knows where that tree is, what type of tree it is, its condition whenever the inventory was done. The other option, instead of just a tag with a number stamp, is what we did at the Willows. A little nicer. It's got the common name of the tree, Latin name, and a QR code. So anyone walking through the Willows can stop at a tree. They don't have to be with Bartlett or with the Willows. Anybody can stop, use their smartphone, scan the QR code, and that QR code will give them information about the tree. A little bit of history of, the background of that tree, how big it's going to get, but also to that specific tree, its approximate age, its value, which is pretty significant on a lot of the trees at the Willows, the value, its condition, its needs, things like that. So little history. So a little bit educational, interactive.
It's very interesting. And so, I've again, in the short period of time I've been at the Willows Park Preserve, I've gone around and I've taken pictures of the code and found that information out. And what's one fascinating piece is there's a map of the property, and so it'll ping where those trees are, right? There's one map that shows where every species is that you all identified, but then it also can go right to that species that you're specifically looking at. In terms of an activity, in terms of an educational learning moment, it's pretty neat. It's like a little scavenger hunt as well.
Oh yeah.
And so I know in the past we've at the Willows Park Preserve, I believe last summer, we started Arboretum tours. A couple of our board members are versed and knowledgeable about the different species of trees, and we're actually going to start those back up again shortly in the next month or so.
Okay.
So my understanding is the Willows Park Preserve is classified as a level 1 arboretum. What does that mean? How many different levels of arboretums are there? What's the bottom? What's the top? And then what are, just for some examples, what are some area arboretums that we may all be familiar with?
So there's 4 levels, level 1 through 4. Level 4 is the top.
Okay.
There's not many. Longwood Gardens is a level 4.
It's a good example.
They're a league of their own. The majority around here, most places, are level 1.
Okay.
No matter what level you are, you have to meet certain criteria. You need to have a tree inventory, a management plan from that inventory, and it needs to be open to the public. The public needs to be able to see it, whether free or paying. And then an organization or a person, whether it's, depending on the level, somebody to oversee the management plan developed from the inventory. The Willows is level 1, and to be considered level 1, you need 25 different species. The plan, and then the other things I mentioned. Another level 1 in the area is Chanticleer.
Okay.
Most colleges, with the exception of a couple around here, some parks, cemeteries are level 1s. Level 2 jumps, you need to become level 2, 100 different species of tree. And then the people in charge of the management plan has to be a paid staff.
Okay.
So, and then level 3, level 2, Morris Arboretum at Penn.
Oh yeah.
Penn State, if you've ever gone through there, their campus is considered Arboretum.
Okay.
They're level 2. Level 3 is 500 species the paid staff overseeing a management plan, as well as pretty, official education programs, classes, trainings. One that we manage around here, Scott Arboretum at Swarthmore College.
Okay.
They're level 3, but there's only a few level 3s actually in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Majority are level 1.
So Willows Park Preserve is a level 1 arboretum, and you identified how many different species?
48.
Okay.
48, and that's just within the driveways and below the mansion. If we went into the wooded areas,
Right.
the hiking trails,
Yeah.
that number would go through the roof.
Go up
Yeah.
a little bit. I know you said you completed the work a few years ago, but can you talk about, maybe a few different types of species, types of trees that you identified?
I know one that's pretty, if you think of the willows, if I think of the willows, I picture this one tree. It's up next to the mansion, off to the left, down a little bit. It's a meta sequoia. A lot of people call it dawn redwood. It's really nice. It's a very nice tree. It's about 75 to 100 years old.
Okay.
It's just an interesting tree. It's a pretty tree. A lot of people that don't know trees think it looks like an evergreen in the summertime. But it's deciduous. It drops its needles in the fall. But in the summer, it's nice if you actually feel the needles. They're soft. It feels almost like a fern. There's a very nice American sycamore down the hill in between the pond and the mansion. It's just a really nice tree. It's huge. It's at least 100 years old. A lot of people, if you had one in your yard, it may be considered a bit of a messy tree because it drops some bark and it drops things once in a while. But it's a extremely sturdy tree. They rarely have insect or disease issues. They're a great tree. If you notice next time you're driving in the city, at least half of the street trees are sycamores.
Huh. Okay.
And they have tiny little sidewalk blocks to grow in. Not the ideal spot. They get hit by car doors and trucks and smog, and those things are 200 years old.
And still going.
Yeah, they're great trees. And then obviously the willows are down by the pond.
How do you age a tree? Like how do you determine how old a tree is?
That is, there's not an exact science to it. I mean, if you cut the tree down, you can count the rings.
But if it's still living,
if it's still living, you pretty much have to give your best estimate. You can't give a exact, but the species, how fast it grows. Some are fast growing, some are slow growing. An 80-foot oak tree may be 3 times older than an 80-foot willow or maple because they grow fast. Yeah. The size of the lateral limbs off the trunk, you could have a huge fat trunk with a whole bunch of thin skinny branches coming off it. The larger the branches coming off of the trunk show that it's older. You just have to go by kind of the species, the growth habit, if it's in the ideal location for that species. There's a lot to get that best estimate, basically.
The age of the trees are interesting to us as an organization because we're always searching for more historical pieces, right, of what we know about the property, about the home. The home was built in 1910, and it's fascinating trying to piece all those puzzles together. What's inside the home and what's outside the home. So what was around in 1910? You know, thinking of the different trees, and then as the house changed hands through a few different families, you know, what did they add? Again, inside the house, you know, what did they update and change inside the house? But then also what did they plan outside the house, right? You know, that Dawn Redwood, you said, you know, 75, easily 75 years old, if not 100.
Yeah, and that's a conservative estimate on the low end. There's a real good chance it's quite a bit older than that, but that's a fast-growing tree.
Yeah.
It's at the top of the hill. They really like a lot of water. So if it's a Dawn Redwood at the bottom of the hill, where it's going to get more water than the top, it's going to grow tall. But because it's at the top, I think it's at least 75, probably older than that.
And is that native to this area?
That is not.
All right.
No. That is one of the few trees on the inventory that was not a native, but
so that
sure
quite
is.
likely would have been one of the families actually brought that in to
Probably,
plant it specifically.
Yeah. But that's one of the oldest known trees that have been found in fossils. There's fossils of that, not that exact tree, but of Metasequoia that are estimated at 50 million years old.
Wow.
So
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
So a big part of the project and what you all provided us, our organization, after you went through all the identification and made this online booklet, there's a lot about tree care, right? So there's one thing, identifying what trees are on your property, what are the age, what's the age, what are the conditions, but you know, being a 47.5-acre park and having some, you know, beautiful species of trees in and around the mansion, it's important to make sure they're kept.
Sure.
You know, so talk to me about the upkeep of trees. What are some basic things that we can do to keep the trees healthy and thriving, and then maybe some more complex things?
Yeah, and that's a lot of it is species specific.
Okay.
Certain trees are real susceptible to some diseases that others aren't. The oak trees, the red oak and pin oak at the Willows are susceptible to a disease that the ash trees are not.
Okay.
But the ash trees are susceptible to an insect that the oak trees are not. So you go look at each tree, each species, see if there's any sign of insect or disease issues, come up with a plan to treat it. There's the obvious, since it's a park and there's people and kids and dogs running around, there's big broken limbs, they need to be taken out. A lot of diseases show their signs in different ways. Some you can only tell by looking at the leaves, which you don't have 12 months to do. Some show up as lesions on the bark, so that you can tell anytime. One overlooked aspect is the part of the tree you don't see is the roots. That's why it gets overlooked so much. Whether it's maintenance and trucks driving or even people walking over time, the soil gets compacted, and compacted soil on tree roots is not good. So I know on the Metasequoia by the mansion, that got used. We used an air spade, aerated the soil, and then there's a large wood chip area of mulch around that tree. The wood chips are great, as they act, it's the most natural mulch you can get, but it also acts as a subliminal do not enter sign. So if a couple people are walking and talking through the grass and then there's a pretty defined circle of wood chips, they just veer around, and a lot of arboretums you'll see have wood chip rings around the trees.
That'll be very helpful. Right now, right now we still have a construction fence
Sure.
up around the whole house. That was primarily back from when we were restoring the roof, which made a ton of sense. It's for safety reasons. But there are plans in the near future to take the construction fence down. So the actually construction fence is circling the dawn redwood to keep people off.
Oh, yeah.
But once that fence comes down, we're going to have to make sure that it's protected, whether it's we're doing, other projects or it's just the, visitors at the park.
Yeah.
So that's a good idea, making sure we can put some wood chips there and kind of designate that area. So sounds good. We so appreciate all the work that you have done and for us. And we started this conversation by talking about the benefits of an arboretum, and we've absolutely seen that. There's been a lot of interest from visitors, and even myself getting some emails asking about the Arboretum. So it's attracting visitors for a specific reason to the Willows Park Preserve. And that's part of our mission, right? We're community focused, and it's about providing the community and visitors to the park with an experience that they might not get somewhere else. And having an Arboretum is definitely beneficial and enhances the experience of the visitors. So we thank you for your work. We're just about out of time for today, but thank you for coming, Tom, and thank you to Bartlett Tree Experts. If you would like some more information about the Willows Park Preserve, updates on projects, news about upcoming programs and events, or news about our Arboretum, you can go to our website at www.willowsparkpreserve.org. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you can join us next time.